This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriations and Adjudication now reconvenes discussions of the fiscal year 2018 executive budget request. This morning we are meeting with the Office of the Attorney General of Guam to discuss their budget. I want to preface this budget hearing with the uncertainty the government of Guam faces with regards to potential negative impacts to the general revenue collections and economic activity as a result of the numerous factors such as the H-2B visa denials, potential federal tax reforms, cuts that may erode GovGuam's revenue base, and caps on Section 30 revenues to be collected. With these issues at the top of our mind, the Legislature has a daunting task of ensuring that we provide sufficient funding for the public services that the people of Guam want and need. As a brief overview, the executive budget request submitted by the Governor through the Bureau of Budget provides for a $16.33 million request, or an $85,000 increase for the Office of the Attorney General from FY17 authorized levels of $16.25 million. This is a .053 increase as compared to FY 2017 authorized levels. The Office of the Attorney General comes today, well, as of yesterday afternoon, earlier lunch yesterday, the Office of the Attorney General was asking for a $17.5 million request. I noticed that last night at 5:06 I received transmittal of a revised budget which takes it down to 17.1. Still a fairly hefty increase of $1 million. Inasmuch as you've already been sworn in, why don't we just go ahead and have your presentation, and then we'll pause the questions afterwards.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and good morning, Madam Vice Speaker and Senator Bisco Lee. I'd like to first introduce my staff. I've been watching the hearings, and this is a large table. It's a large to medium to large size agency. On my farthest left is Deputy Attorney General Carl Espaldon, Deputy of the Solicitor Division. Solicitors are the opinion writers, and we often answer the Legislature's request for information on statutes and laws. Next to Carl is Deputy Attorney General Carol Hinkle Sanchez. She's the Deputy of the Juvenile, now named the Family Division, and I'll explain a little bit on the renaming. Next to Carol is Deputy Attorney General, I was going to say Carl. Those two often get confused as the same person. Fred Nishihira, Deputy of our Consumer Division. Next to Fred is Deputy Attorney General Ken Orcutt, our Deputy of the Litigation Division. To my immediate left is Deputy Attorney General Rebecca Perez. She heads up the Child Support Division. To my immediate right is our Chief Prosecutor, Deputy Attorney General Phil Tedinko. Next to Phil is our Chief of Staff, Jacqueline Zonin Cruz, and next to Jackie is our Accounting Supervisor and the Head of our Financial Unit and Administration, Mr. Tom Paulino. Good morning, Senator Espaldon. And yes, Senator, in preparation for the budget late yesterday afternoon, we did submit a revised budget to the Guam Legislature, and I'm not quite sure, can I ask MIS to get this up on the screen? I'm not quite sure. Okay, there. Okay. And if I can go right, and it doesn't work. Next slide, then. I'll just say next slide. The revised budget as of yesterday, as the Speaker had mentioned, for FY18 is 17.1. It is a reduction from our March submittal on personnel of 14.1 down to 13.7, a reduction in personnel. The other object categories, I believe, have stayed the same. It is an increase in from our FY17 budget, as the speaker had mentioned, close to $1 million of $935,970, and we will explain the need for that increase. Next slide. The increase primarily represents an organic growth in personnel. We're talking about increments. We are also added to that are benefits, fringe benefits. We are asking only 2 new positions. 3 new positions. We are asking for 1 auditor 2 to supplement the white-collar crime unit. We have 1 auditor. We're asking for a 2nd auditor. We are asking for 2 unclassified victim advocates for our newly established victim notification unit, which Phil will talk a little bit more about. As some of you know, the Victim Witness Executive Services has been reformatted, and we now have our Victim Service Center and our Victim Notification Unit. 2 unclassified advocates and 1 auditor. Next slide. For the information of some of the members who may not be familiar with the Attorney General's office, we do receive large federal grant funds on a 6-to-6 matching for child support. It is our largest division, and Rebecca will talk a little bit more about that during the presentation. For child support, we receive 2.7 in matching to our 34% local funds, and a $2.1 million in other categories from the federal government to our 34% local match. We also, for our Victim Service Center, are funded at $351,000 for our 7 federally funded advocates, for a grand total of $5.2 of federal funds to our agency. Senators, if you were to add our local budget with our 5.2, the Office of the Attorney General is a 22.4 approximate agency. It is a medium-sized agency in terms of size. Next slide, please. Our personnel. We have 227 FTEs, so we do have some vacancies. That is a somewhat medium-sized government agency, but if you look at our budget, we are quite large, and that is because we have 60-plus attorneys that are, attorneys don't come cheap. Of the 17 vacancies, they are being actively recruited. I will let you know that we have made offers in some of those 17 positions. We're rating mostly the support staff, waiting for acceptances, or if they choose not to come on board. So we expect the 17, at least 10 to 11 of those 17 vacancies to be filled in this quarter. The remaining vacancies are with our senior attorneys, and I know that the public defender was here also talking about the difficulty in recruiting senior attorneys as a result of the Competitive Wage Act. The entry level for a senior attorney with 8 years or more without any government experience is $75,000. It is hard to recruit a seasoned trial lawyer at $75,000. So I do not expect that the 6 senior attorney positions will be easily filled between now and September 30th. Our lapses have come predominantly from our inability to fill, predominantly in prosecution and litigation, our attorney positions at the low level. The Competitive Wage Act, as the Vice Speaker knows and the Speaker understands, has been very trying on government attorney recruitment. It has just, and I'm almost at a loss as to what we can do to resolve that. We are hoping to hire this quarter a, I think you can call them a headhunter. Jackie, what do you call that? A lawyer recruitment firm. We have put recruitment efforts at law schools, on the National Association of Attorneys General, and it's still very difficult to recruit. Even I had given authority to fill about last month for above-step hiring, and even at that, the person turned it down for something else. So we don't have a law school here. We don't have a pool of attorneys to pull from. And historically, for the last several decades, the Attorney General's office hires from off-island. What I have done, Senators, in the large vacancy pool of attorneys, at least in the third quarter, I've authorized Phil to underfill Attorney 4 and Attorney 3 levels with senior law clerks. Those are our graduates who have come back, who have graduated from law school and are pending taking the bar. So we have underfilled, and that means that there are some lapses, senior Attorney 3s and 4s with senior law clerks. Those 3 law clerks hopefully will be passing the bar this month. If they do not pass the bar here in Guam this month, we give another opportunity for the February bar. And my hope is that these senior law clerks and graduates that have come home will be added members, Attorney 1s, to our pool of prosecutors. So I'm really glad that we have the senior law clerks. Again, for FY18, we are asking the 3 new positions that takes us up to 30 full-time positions. We'll start with the divisions now, and Senators, I will be speaking generally for administration, family, solicitors, and litigation, and then I will allow Deputy Perez and Deputy Tadinko, because those are our 2 largest divisions, to speak directly to the Senators on their division. I'd like to start out with the administration division that is headed by Chief of Staff. I just deputized Jackie. Our Chief of Staff, Jackie Zonin. Next slide. The administration division has 30 FTEs. 30 of the 227, 30 of them are at administration. And it represents $2.2 million in our overall budget. With object categories, it's 2.9. That's roughly about a 15 to 17% of our overall budget. The administration division is the heart of the Attorney General's office, and I want to thank this body for the last 2 years and the Speaker for his generosity and support in allowing us to build the infrastructure for that division. We now have an HR unit headed by Mr. Tony Uggan. We have a financial unit headed by Mr. Paulino over here that takes care of payroll, procurement, and accounting for a $22 million agency. We have our supervisor for our IT unit, Mr. Peter Leon Guerrero. And the rest of the support staff are AOs, assistant or AAs, administrative assistants, and program coordinators. I'd like to note that the program coordinators are running the following programs through the administration division. Our VOCA and federal funds, the Criminal Injuries Compensation Fund, the Criminal History Clearance Fund, that's where you get your clearances from the AG's office, the Notary Program Fund, the Consumer Protection Fund, and our Family Violence Registry. Those are somewhat of the full gambit of what the administration division of the Office of the Attorney General and its infrastructure is currently managing for the office. Next slide, other sources. Next slide, please. Here's an idea of these particular accounts that are managed by our office. In the account of the consumer protection, it's a very nominal $4,000. Fred needs to go after some businesses here. The Victim Witness Travel Fund, those are the clearances. And we actually started collecting on that fund just last year. So if you come and get a $15 clearance, that money goes into that fund. It is used for witness travel, usually at prosecution whenever we have to bring in witnesses for particular trials or victims in a case. The notary fund, we have 580 notaries, and the fund is healthy at $130,000. The criminal injuries compensation fund is $1.4 million. That was the recovery that Mr. Tom Paulino was able in the last 2 years to recover to the fund. These are fees paid by defendants in 22 types of crimes, and that 1.4 is a amalgam or aggregate of a decade of trying to bring the fund back up to a healthy figure. The speaker knows that when I first started, it was a negative $285,000. This fund, Senators, is now protected. Thank you to this legislature. The 33rd Guam legislature has protected the child support funds and the criminal injuries funds from any tapping by the administration. And we have our federal grant funds of 2.8. Next slide. I'm proud, do we have a VOCA? Is there a slide on VOCA? Okay, all right, I'm not sure where the VOCA slide, there it is, I'm sorry. Okay, 2 slides back. The territory receives currently a little over $1 million annually from the Office of Victims of Crime. The Office of the Attorney General operates and runs the VOCA, Victims of Crime Grant Funds. And in 2015, there was an enormous increase to states and territories. We received 1.1 in 2015 and 1.3 in 2016. Senators, we have distributed those funds to the various subgrantees. Those were just distributed this last month, and those funds are available for the subgrantees to use through 2018 and 2019. If I could go down to AVINS, that's Automated Victim Information Notification System, we have reserved $642,000 from Automated Notification System for Victims. We are expected to announce our request for proposals, our RFP, this month. And we expect these 2017 funds to come in shortly, and we haven't heard that Congress has reduced those funds, so we're probably looking at, again, another $1 million in our VOCA grant, and I'm glad to get it out to the various subgrantees therein. Senators, are there any questions with regard to administration before I move on to the Family Division with Deputy Carol Hinkle-Sanchez? All right, very good. The next is the Family Division, run by Deputy Attorney Carol Hinkle-Sanchez. She has a status quo, next slide, in her staff. She has 12 in her staff. Her budget for 2018 is a little over $1 million in personnel budgets and $1.2 million with overall object categories. The Family Division has charged 405 juvenile delinquency cases, 58 non-criminal cases, which are what we call persons in need of services or beyond control type cases. And we have diverted 80 juvenile arrest cases to our restorative justice program. It's called HERO, which stands for Healing, Empowering, Rehabilitating, and Overcoming. This is an alternative to putting children through the criminal justice system. It is a restorative justice diversion program, and it kicked off late last year, and we hope that by the end of 2018, next year, we will see a reduction in the number of juvenile criminal delinquency filings. The goal is, Senators, not to increase our charging of children, but to decrease our charging. And Carol assures me that with her the enforcement of the HERO program, that juvenile delinquency charges will go down. I asked her, why is it still so high? And she just said, General, children are committing a lot of crimes out there. So we have a lot of work to do in that respect. The Family Division continues to support the Lonnie Kate program, which is a training program for public and private schools, teaching children how to protect themselves against sexual assault and abuse. In addition, I have assigned the Family Division, Juvenile Division, now the Family Division, the responsibility of overseeing defendants who are judged incompetent in criminal court and are entered into the mental health court program under Judge Senzon. Once a defendant has been adjudged incompetent and is no longer going to be tried, then the case, in my judgment, no longer is criminal in nature and it becomes civil. So I have assigned that to the Family Division, and Carol will be working with Guam Behavioral and Health with regard to the treatment of these defendants who remain in mental health court for 2 to 3 years. And if the defendants have completed their treatment in mental health court and are released from mental health court, then we have the option of continuing to track them. Perhaps they've just gotten better, but if they haven't, and I'll give you the example of the baby slapping case, that defendant was released from mental health court previously. She did not comply with her treatment after the court had released her, and she probably stopped taking her meds, and unfortunately we had a repeat. We now have the Baby Alexa law that allows us in that situation, if a mental health client in mental health court is released from the jurisdiction of the court, no more monitoring, we can file a civil case through Guam Behavioral to continue to monitor this person for a period of 1 year at a time, so that we don't have a repeat. So I'm really pleased that we have the Baby Alexa law. We can also look at the filing of conservatorships. Bottom line is, Senator, that is a civil matter, and I have indicated to the prosecutor, your prosecutor doesn't have to sit in treatment court. Go on and do some trials. The Family Division will take care of these defendants in mental health court. If there are no questions for Carol, I'll move on to the Litigation Division. Headed by Mr. Orcutt, 20 positions, about 1.7 personnel budget. Pretty much status quo, Senator. Again, the difficulty that Ken has is in recruiting senior litigators for his division. He has 2 vacancies. We are just having difficulty filling those vacancies. The Litigation Division, however, Senator, brings in the greatest rate of return of 3.03 on the dollar. And that's because the Litigation Division investigates and either approves or declines government claims and defends the government and the Treasury against litigation. And Ken's division has been doing just a marvelous job in defending the general fund and making sure that any claims that are paid are valid claims and not frivolous ones. But Ken keeps the general coffers intact. If there are no questions for Ken, we'll move on to the Solicitor Division with Mr. Espaldin. Again, status quo, 21 staff. He has 15 Assistant Attorney Generals. 5 of those Assistant AGs are assigned to specific agencies. The agencies that have full-time solicitors are Department of Public Works, Department of Public Health and Social Services, GITA, Land Management, I'm missing one, Carl, GPD. So those are the 5 line agencies that we have assigned a full-time solicitor to. The remaining 10 solicitors, including Carl, take care of all the rest of the government and any requests that you might have with regard to statutes or laws. We handle over 800 plus requests from the various agencies. Most of those are contract reviews. And we've issued several opinions in 2016. By the way, our annual report is now online, so if you'd like to see that in addition to this presentation, our report's online. But it's pretty much status quo. Carl and Fred is the next division, are putting together executive trainings in areas of FOIA, open government, adverse action, and procurement. And those schedules are going out this month throughout the government of Guam, and I'm sure the government agencies are going to be very interested in attending those trainings. The Consumer Protection Division, headed by Deputy Attorney General Fred Nishihiro, 8 employees, $630,000 budget, and the number one consumer complaint continues to be identity theft, as it has been for the last couple of years. In addition to the consumer protection efforts of this division, Deputy Attorney General Fred Nishihiro has taken on the responsibility of collecting for victims of crime in restitution court. That responsibility was moved from the prosecution division to Fred. He took it over. We now have a civil attorney going to Northern Court once a month in restitution court. And I believe we've collected about $300 and some thousand in closed restitution cases, correct? Right. And we are working closely with the judiciary of Guam so that we can get an accounting of defendants who pay their restitution after a case is closed, probation's gone. The responsibility by law is the Office of the Attorney General to collect for victims of crime. And we are building that unit as a collection unit, and it might expand to collections for government agencies such as bad checks, etc. So that responsibility we are just at this stage creating and building, and Mr. Nishihiro is working with the judiciary on restitution collections. The judiciary also might be sending us collection for bad tickets that haven't been paid. I've suggested to DRT and Department of Administration, send me your bad checks, we'll collect those. So I really would like to see the Attorney General's office continue our efforts in the collection area. The remaining 2 divisions are child support and the prosecution division. I would now like to turn it over to Deputy Attorney General Rebecca Perez. She operates the largest division, which is child support. Thank you.
Good morning. Next slide, please. Continuing with the pattern that's been set up by the Attorney General, you can see that in our Child Support Enforcement Division slide that's up now, we're looking at personnel for 63 FTE positions in the amount of $1,419,000. That is the 34% match amount, the local amount, with 66% of course being matched by the federal government under our grants. Thank you, sorry. Those positions include our attorneys, of which we have 8, our enforcement officers, who were normally previously referred to as investigators, but our case managers, we refer to them as enforcement officers, paralegals, call center. We handle also our own in-house state disbursement unit. In many states, that is actually contracted out, but we employ the state disbursement unit here, and that's the agency that, that's the division, the work group that monitors money in and money out, not only for each specific case, but the batch transactions of money in, money out daily between the bank and reconciliation of bank, Department of Administration, and then our case records. The total other object category brings our budget request to $2.314 odd million. A significant portion of that has to do with contracts. We do maintain and we contract a vendor, which was competitively procured, that we maintain a vendor to assist in the maintenance and operation of our case management system. Our case management system under federal requirements has to be able to access and give information across a network nationally. It has to do with